Hi everyone, thanks again for coming back to another episode of Declan's Autism Journey. Today I really wanted to focus on what we're doing now with Declan and who we're treating with, and really diving deeply into that and what that looks like for us as a family, for Declan specifically. There's so much to it. And so just to begin, we are treating with a functional neurologist out of New York, based in Rockville Center, which is just at the start of Long Island, so about 7 miles outside of JFK Airport, so very easy to get to. I found him on a podcast. You know, as I've said before, this journey is a leap of faith, and multiple leaps of faith, right? Like every step I take, I feel like is a leap of faith many times. And so I found Dr. Melillo on this podcast. It really resonated with me and my husband. So we immediately set up a Zoom, shared a lot about Declan and where he was. And, you know, that was January 31st of 2023. And by April, we were there for an intensive week. And it was very different in every way than anything else we had done for Declan before. The center, you walk in and on the wall, there's a sign says, "Hope lives here." And hope is a really hard word for me in this journey because my hopes have been crushed so many times, to be frank. And I remember how when we were on our Zoom call with Dr. M before we went to see him, and as we were talking through the things with Declan, you know, he said, I said to him, I'm actually afraid to have hope. Like, everything you're saying sounds great, but I'm afraid to have hope. And he said to me, you know, from everything I was telling him and his 30 years of research and his hundreds of peer-reviewed papers and his best-selling books. I mean, this man just has done it all. And he said to me, I get it, but there's also no reason not to have hope. And that really changed our path. It changed Declan's path. And in so many ways that I couldn't have even imagined, that I'd always hoped for, but that I had started to feel like was never going to come to fruition for Declan. But anyhow, nonetheless, we all went there, and Dr. Emmon prepared us, his team had prepared us that the first couple days would be potentially really hard. Everything they do, nothing hurts. You know, but it's really about bringing the brain back into balance. And the whole premise and root cause, in Dr. Melillo's opinion, and I'm going to explain it in my words, which are very different probably than his, but hopefully, you know, it resonates and makes sense to you, is that the left hemisphere and the right hemisphere are very out of balance, which means that they cannot communicate well. And so, you know, that's the first time anyone had ever shared that was the belief as to what autism is and why it is the way it is. Also this feeling that these children are disconnected from their bodies, meaning they don't feel things. They don't feel pain. They don't feel temperature. They don't have really a sense of smell. So many different things that were just like, wow, this is totally new. But again, I'm open to it, right? My husband and I were open to it because we just were like, we are still searching. And so we go to the center, and again, you know, they're putting on these transcranial pads in the front, a TENS unit on his back, all of these things to start awakening his senses. And it's hard. And the fact that most of these children haven't gone through the typical developmental stages in life. So, you know, Declan's fear paralysis was like off the charts. And so again, most other providers kind of recoil and are like, just kind of want you to go away because your child is screaming and acting so irrational, but yet it's what they have to go through in order to overcome that fear. At Dr. Melillo's, you know, they embrace it. And when that is happening, they just work even harder. They just keep going. And, you know, our first session, I went in with Declan first, and Dr. M just did his full evaluation of Declan physically. And that was great. And then they were like, let's just get into it. Like, we're just doing this. Let's just jump into it. And my husband took Declan into the session because they were like, you know what, Mom, you're tiny. You probably won't be able to hold him. So he's going to kick, he's going to scream, he might bite. It's so emotional to think about. And my husband did it. You know, we knew we had to do it. We were scared, but we knew we had to do it. And so, you know, I'm sitting out in the hallway with my other 2 kids, and I can just hear him screaming. And I know nothing is hurting him. I know it's just pure fear. It's discomfort. It's just out of the norm for him. And, you know, they come out and everybody's sweating. My husband is sweating and Declan is a pool of water. And, but they were like, he did it. He did it. And so we took a break and we were going back later that day for our second session. And I just said to Dr. Melillo and to Dr. Jesse, who was the main person doing the treatment with him, or that would be after our day 1, I said, I want to try it. I want to do it. I have driven this child's bus since day 1 and I want to do it. And they both looked at me and were like, okay. And I said, listen, if I can't do it and I can't hold him, I will have Tim come in, but I want to try it. And by the second session, Declan sat on my lap and he whimpered a little bit through it, but that was it. There was no, it was just like my mind was blown. And the next day, instead of sitting on my lap for a session, the session, he stood on the machine. He stood on this vibrating plate with all of this stuff on him, and he just did it. And Dr. Jesse and we had another assistant there, Jackie, helping out, and they were just like, he's amazing. He's such a little rock star. This is like, he is moving through his fear of paralysis and overcoming it fairly quickly. And I just thought that speaks volumes to me that this is what he needs. And he knows he needs it. And he's working through that fear. And I'm standing right behind him and I'm holding his hand. And he knows I'm here, but he's doing it. And we stayed a week. We did 2 treatments a day. And more than anything, though, we came home with equipment and we came home with marching orders to do our part and to keep it up. And we did. And we've gone back several times for additional treatment. But what I did too is I bought the cold laser that has the Melillo method protocols built into it. So twice a day, I'm exercising his primitive reflexes to hope that they go away. And you know, when we started down this path, I was like, I don't even know what primitive reflexes were. No one, our pediatrician, our developmental pediatrician, no one had ever mentioned those words to me before. And the idea is that typical developing people grow out of their primitive reflexes by the time they reach a year. In all of the autistic folks that Dr. M has studied, they all have retained primitive reflexes. So the first part is exercising those out, and you have to stimulate them to get rid of them or to have them move on to bigger things. And so, you know, we're still doing that. When Dr. M evaluated Declan on that first day, you know, the scale is 0 to 4, 4 being the worst. Declan was a 4 in every retained primitive reflex. And Dr. M was the first person that I heard say, like, he is severe. You know, for us, Declan, we always felt like he wasn't severe on the spectrum because we could leave our house. We could still go out to dinner. We could go to these lacrosse tournaments with our oldest son. You know, Declan just acclimated to wherever we went, and we always felt like those were signs that he wasn't considered severe on the spectrum. But, you know, we always also knew he couldn't talk, so, and couldn't communicate and couldn't share how he was feeling. And so, you know, to hear that was hard for sure. You know, once you hear it, you can't again go back to denial or excuse it away. And so we really just dug into this program. We felt like we connected with Dr. Melillo. We felt like we connected with his team. And more than anything, I feel like Declan, since we have gone back several times and spent a couple of weeks at a time there, you know, Declan has really developed a bond with Dr. Jesse and with all of the folks there. You know, it is the most inclusive place that I have ever been. You know, day one I walked in and I met this other mom who it wasn't her first time there. So she didn't have the deer in headlights look that I had, but she recognized it in me. And she, you know, immediately gave me a hug and just said, it's okay, you're in the right spot. And I needed to hear that more than I needed to hear anything else, because we were so fearful of not hurting Declan, but not helping Declan. And I was so fearful of the emotional fallout of another thing that we were trying not working. And she could sense that. And the most beautiful part of all of this is having done 5 weeks of intensive, having done treatment at home twice a day since April. I purchased a laser in September, and you know we have really committed and dug into that. You know, we've seen these amazing strides in Declan, and when I was back there in December at the clinic, you know, Dr. Melillo called me out and said, "Hey, there's a mom I want you to meet." And she was me. I had come full circle. It was this new mom. And I just gave her a hug and I said, you're in the right place. Just keep doing it. Keep going. Keep having faith. And there is no magic pill to make this all go away or to make it better or to make your child recover any quicker. There is just hard work, determination, finding the right provider, and continuing to believe that what you are doing is the right thing for your child. Now, that is not to say, you know, while we have 100% committed ourselves to Dr. Melillo and the Melillo method, you know, I'm still also engaging with a naturopath to go down the pathway of parasites, heavy metals, toxins, because we haven't done that yet. And I do think that's important. And again, we're open to all things that will not hurt Declan. You know, and because we know that the path he is on is the path to progress, I'm at a point where I can engage others and welcome them onto my bus that I'm driving for him, without being so fearful of disappointment. I really do believe, my belief is that you have to change the brain in order to change these signs of autism and to get him communicating. And we're doing that. We're doing that through the Melillo method. There's so much more to say about this, and I will talk about that on my next episode, but I want to end here because it's a lot. I'm emotional. And I just want you to hopefully take away the fact that don't stop fighting. On the hard days, they're hard, embrace them. And I think as we navigate our journey, you know, the best kind of mantra that we've developed is literally one day at a time. You know, it is overwhelming, it's scary, all of those things. But if you take it one day at a time, it's a little bit less and it's a little more manageable. And so that's where we're at. And on the great days, we celebrate. And on the hard days, we try not to beat ourselves up and we try not to lose hope. But that's still hard even at where I'm at on my journey, because there's just no definitive answers. While there is huge progress and we know his words will come, we just don't know if that is in a year, in 5 years, in 10 years. And that's hard. That is just hard. There's no doubt about it. So, but anyhow, I will leave with that. Thanks for listening. And I hope these words spoke to your heart today. And I look forward to my next episode. Bye, everyone.